Picture this. You're living in one of the wealthiest countries in Europe. Your economy is booming. And yet, you can't find a place to live. You're waiting years for a doctor's appointment. And you've completely lost faith that anyone in power actually cares. Welcome to Ireland in 2024, where something doesn't add up. This isn't supposed to happen in a prosperous nation with record employment and a thriving economy. But behind those glossy headlines, frustration is boiling over. Today, we're breaking down the top 10 reasons why people in Ireland are genuinely angry, and why this matters way beyond Irish borders. Whether you've heard whispers about Ireland's success story, or you're just curious why protests keep making international news, buckle up. This is going to surprise you. Number 10. The pace of social change and cultural tensions. Let's start with something that shocked political observers worldwide. In March 2024, Ireland held 2 constitutional referendums on family definitions and care responsibilities. The government, backed by all major parties, confidently expected easy victories. Instead, voters crushed both proposals, rejecting the family amendment by nearly 68% and the care amendment by a staggering 74%. What happened? Ireland's political establishment completely misread the room. They assumed the progressive, liberal Ireland that legalized same-sex marriage and abortion would automatically embrace these changes. But voters saw vague wording, worried about unintended legal consequences, and felt the proposals were rushed without proper consultation. It exposed a massive disconnect between Dublin's political elite and everyday Irish people, a theme you'll hear repeatedly in this video. Number 9. Societal discrimination and rising racism. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Ireland has historically been a welcoming nation, but that's changing. Reports of racism increased significantly, with over 600 incidents reported to the Irish Network Against Racism in 2022. Anti-immigrant protests, some turning violent, have become disturbingly common. But here's the key detail most people miss. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Far-right groups are deliberately exploiting Ireland's housing crisis and lack of public services. When families can't find homes and see refugees being housed in hotels, opportunists stoke division. It's a dangerous cocktail where legitimate housing anger gets weaponized into xenophobia, and it's tearing communities apart. Number 8. Issues facing young people. If you're young in Ireland right now, it's just depressing, and the future looks pretty grim. If you are a parent or older adult, you must recognize and acknowledge their frustration. When a person has no hope, it has to be one of the most absolutely frustrating life experiences you can have. It has been said, you don't know a person until you have walked a mile in their shoes. So pay close attention. For 18 to 29-year-olds, the top concerns are housing at 67% and cost of living at 62%. Pretty simple stuff that goes back thousands of years. Food, shelter, and clothing are essential to sustain life. But the statistics get darker. 22% of young people have skipped meals because they can't afford food. This is alarming and needs to be addressed. This reminds me of the Great Depression and Hoovervilles. If you are unfamiliar with what Hooverville is, do a quick search on the internet. While you are at it, look up Hoover stew. It is actually an awesome meal that my family and I eat on a regular basis. Much like goulash, you can dress it up with whatever spices and ingredients that you like. Nearly half are dissatisfied with their housing situation, which directly correlates with poor mental well-being. Amazing, and we wonder why mental health problems have become an epidemic. Think about that for a second. This is a wealthy EU nation where young adults are choosing between eating and paying rent. Home ownership among 30-year-olds has dropped to less than 1/3. Think about this. How do you create and form a family if the man and woman don't have a place to live? An entire generation is watching the possibility of owning a home slip away like a mirage in the desert. Number 7. Climate action frustration. Here's an interesting one. Ireland actually has broad climate consensus. 81% of people are worried about climate change and support climate action. So what's the problem? The government's glacial pace of implementation. People want action, the government promises action, but then very little actually happens. A glacial pace is a good way to put things. It is unwise for politicians to pretend they haven't heard about the problems. With each election cycle, the voters have a choice. Maybe the problems can't be solved immediately, but the lack of a clear action plan and how it is paid for would be a big help to everyone. This creates a uniquely Irish form of frustration. Everyone agrees on what needs to be done, but political will evaporates when it's time to make tough decisions. It's climate paralysis by committee, or more commonly referred to as paralysis by analysis. Number 6. The wealth and inequality gap. Now we're getting to the structural problems. These are beyond the control of the individual. Ireland ranks 4th most unequal in wage distribution among 32 European countries. The top earner makes 4.2 times what the bottom earner makes. But here's the real kicker. Since 2013, the number of households with net wealth over €1 million has doubled. Meanwhile, about 140,000 people who work full-time still live in poverty. This means, in layman terms, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Let that sink in. You can have a job and still be poor. The wealthy are getting exponentially wealthier while working families struggle to survive. Ireland's economic success is increasingly concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, and people can see it. This problem exists around the world. This problem not only exists, but persists in the United States as well. So, with the United States being commonly referred to as the world's largest economy, global leadership has set the pace. Number 5. Crumbling infrastructure and public services. Ireland desperately needs infrastructure investment because their infrastructure is estimated to be about 25% below other high-income European countries. Water services can only support 35,000 new homes annually, well below housing targets. Transport is inadequate. Electricity infrastructure is struggling. Think of this. How does Ireland's government plan to compete with artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence needs data centers, and data centers use a lot of electricity. This matters because infrastructure isn't sexy, but it's essential. When you can't build enough houses because water systems can't handle new developments, that housing crisis isn't just a policy failure, it's an infrastructure collapse decades in the making. Number 4. Complete loss of trust in government and politicians. Here's where the anger gets more personal. According to a 2023 National Trust Survey, only 47% of Irish people trust their national government. But political parties? A devastating 26%, the lowest trust rating of any institution measured. The biggest reason cited? 62.5% of people believe government officials don't follow the same rules as everyone else. Think about how damaging that is. When 2/3 of your population believes their leaders operate above the law, they enforce on everyone else, you don't have a democracy problem. You have a legitimacy crisis. Every broken promise, every scandal, every do as I say, not as I do moment feeds this corrosive cynicism. Trust in government leaders was much higher in the past. The March 2024 referendum defeats? Partly about this. People don't trust their government's judgment anymore, so even reasonable proposals get rejected on principle. Number 3. Healthcare system in crisis. Ireland's healthcare satisfaction sits at a crushing 26%, the lowest of all public services. In July 2024, hospital waiting lists hit a record-breaking 911,500 people, the highest ever recorded. This includes patients waiting for outpatient appointments, inpatient procedures, and day case treatments. The government launched a waiting list action plan in 2024 targeting a 6% reduction. 6 months in, instead of the expected 19,600 reduction, almost 40,400 additional people were added to the waiting lists, a 60,000-person shortfall from the target. Hospital consultants warned it could take over a decade to clear current backlogs. When you're in pain, when your child needs treatment, when your parents are suffering, these aren't just numbers. Their lives are on hold. Socialized medicine sounds great until you need it. This debate takes place around the world. Number 2. Cost of living crushing families. Even though inflation has cooled from its 2022 peak of over 9%, daily expenses remain brutal. By late 2024, grocery price inflation sat at 3.6% annually. What does that mean in real terms? Between November 2023 and November 2024, butter prices jumped 18.6%, chocolate rose 17.5%, and coffee increased 8.2%. But the real squeeze comes from essentials. Between January and November 2024, rent increased 4.5% and mortgage interest rose 3.8%. Here's what makes people furious. While wages did increase by 5.6%, for the 140,000 people working full-time yet living in poverty, those increases don't keep pace with costs. The living wage in Ireland is €14.75 per hour, higher than the minimum wage. This means tens of thousands of workers earn legal wages but can't actually afford to live. The real problem, the annual increase of the cost of goods and services is outpacing wage growth. The annual raise, if you are so lucky, is less than the price increases of goods and services. Over time, it is devastating, as is seen in the cost of buying a home. Number 1. The housing crisis, Ireland's defining catastrophe. We've finally arrived at the big one, and trust me, it deserves the top spot. Ireland faces an estimated deficit of 212,500 to 256,000 homes. Let me repeat that. 250,000 missing homes. Compounding the problem is how would infrastructure be able to meet the building of new homes? Each home needs to be heated, electricity, water, and sanitation. The lack of investment into infrastructure exacerbates housing starts. From 2012 to 2022, rents exploded 90% while wages grew only 27%. But the homelessness numbers tell the truly horrifying story. In November 2024, Ireland crossed a dark milestone: 15,199 people in emergency accommodation, including 4,658 children. And remember, these official figures don't include rough sleepers, people couch surfing, those in domestic violence shelters, or asylum seekers in transitional accommodation. Since the current government took office in February 2020, when there were 10,148 homeless people, the number has increased by 47.4% to nearly 15,000. Month after month, the numbers just keep climbing. September 2024, 14,760 people. October, 14,966. November, over 15,000. This isn't a plateau, it's an accelerating crisis. Things are moving in the wrong direction. The reasons run deep. Ireland's social housing supply sits at just 9% of housing stock, far below Austria's 24%, France's 17%, or the Netherlands' 29%. The country depends heavily on private developers, but between 102,000 and 164,000 properties sit vacant or derelict, while people sleep in cars and hotel rooms. Government schemes to address this have failed spectacularly. The repair and leasing scheme? Only 288 leases signed for 554 properties out of 3,182 applications. The vacant property refurbishment grant? Just 100 grants from 6,034 applications. These aren't rounding errors, they're systemic failures. Meanwhile, charities describe the situation as alarming, incomprehensible, and scandalous. Politicians promise, plans get published, money gets allocated, but people keep becoming homeless. If you're finding this eye-opening, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future deep dives into what's really happening behind the headlines. Ireland, one of Europe's success stories on paper, is seething with anger beneath the surface. From the historic referendum rejection to the 250,000 missing homes, we're watching a wealthy nation fail at the fundamentals of governance. Here's what ties all these issues together. Ireland has resources. They have budget surpluses. They have record employment. What they don't have is political will, competent execution, or public trust. When your infrastructure is 25% below comparable nations despite being rich, when hospital waiting lists hit 911,500 despite hundreds of millions in funding, when homelessness breaks records month after month despite endless action plans, that's not bad luck. That's system failure. The Irish aren't angry because times are tough everywhere. They're angry because their country has the money to fix these problems, but can't or won't do it effectively. They're angry because political elites are completely disconnected from their daily reality. They're angry because every institution meant to protect them, housing, healthcare, infrastructure, even the democratic process itself, is failing simultaneously. And perhaps most importantly, they're angry because they're watching their children's futures vanish. When young people can't afford food, when couples in their 40s still can't buy a first home, when thousands of children sleep in hotels instead of homes, that's not just an economic problem. That's a moral crisis. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in Ireland, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into global issues, and drop a comment answering this. Have you seen similar patterns in your country? Lots of money but failing basic services? I'd love to hear your perspective, and share this with anyone who thinks Ireland's economic miracle tells the whole story, because clearly it doesn't. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.